sit there for now.
I'd like to call to order the October 26, 2011 meeting of the Milton School Committee. And as is our custom, I invite you to stand as you're able and salute the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh boy. For our agenda this evening, I have two minor corrections. The item 11B, this health insurance memorandum of agreement, will not be an executive session. It will be at the beginning of the chairman's report. It has to be voted in open session for reasons we'll explain later on. And given that the only thing remaining in executive session would be approval of minutes, we will forego the executive session for this evening, and so we'll take approval of minutes at a later time. Anything else? Ms. Sheridan.
Since we're going live now, I'd like to make an announcement later on, maybe after the facility subcommittee, about the 350th committee.
Okay.
Please.
So 8.5. Anything else for the agenda? So then we'll declare the agenda approved. Before we go right into the meeting, I'll take a moment to violate the agenda and introduce our three student members who are joining us for the first time tonight. We have Acadia Ryder, who's in 11th grade, a member of the mock trial team in the French Club. We have Steve Pierce in the 12th grade, a member of the Student Leaders Program, National Honor Society, and is the president of both the Foreign Students Club and the Computer and Design Club. And we have Darian Johnson, also 12th grade, a member of the Future Business Leaders and Best Buddies. So we welcome you. It is our custom, as it is required, to have students as members of the committee. They're not voting members, but they are entitled to and encouraged to participate in discussion as they choose, because they often bring a perspective that those of us sitting around the table don't see. So we welcome you, and we're glad you're here, and we encourage you to participate.
Run to get here.
So we will go into our regularly scheduled agenda and open with citizen speak. There's only one name on this sheet, but it appears to be a lot of people. We have the Milton High School golf team here, so I would recognize them. Welcome this evening.
Hello, everyone. Our coach, Ben Kelly, can actually not make it tonight. So I'm Sam Taher. I'm a senior, and I'm also the captain of the golf team. And I'll let each other golfer introduce himself.
Brian Higgins, senior, captain of the golf team.
Colin McCabe, sophomore.
Wait.
You got to pass that down.
Want to say it again?
Colin McCabe, sophomore.
Lloyd Hill, freshman.
Jack Clark, sophomore. Mark Gianmarco, sophomore.
Alex Corcoran, senior.
Mike Davis, sophomore.
Cam Brown, sophomore.
Ryan Clark, junior.
Chris Lamb, senior.
Brian Mullen, junior.
So just for a quick recap of this season, we only had 4 returning golfers from last season. We went 4-3 in the Carey division, 3-4 in the Herget division for a 7-7 overall record. Brian and I both had scoring averages in the 30s for match play. For the Bay State tournament, we played at the Country Club. Brian and I and Ryan Clark. I shot a 77, Brian shot an 82, and Ryan shot a 93. Brian and I were named first team All-Stars. Our team took second place, only to Needham by 5 strokes. And I won individual low honors called the Carmen Gallo Award. We also qualified and played in the MIAA South Sectional this past week, but we placed outside the top 3, so we didn't advance to the state finals.
Excellent.
Well, I want to congratulate you all. I have to say that it wasn't too many years ago that we had a hard time fielding a golf team. And this is an impressive group of people with some impressive results, because it wasn't too many years ago that pretty much anyone who knew what a club looked like could get on the team because we just didn't have people to play it. So I'm glad to see it's become a big sport with the school. Anyone else want to, any of our golfers want to chime in?
Yeah, I just want to say to all of you who don't play golf, you have no idea how hard a game this is. So a 77 at the country club is pretty unbelievable.
Yeah.
And also, I'm a golfing advocate. I have a lower index than this guy here, but a statistic is 95% of the world's golfers can't break 100. And you got 3 guys here that are shooting in the 70s. I think that's amazing. Well done.
Ms. Kelly.
When you say you played at the country club, do you mean the country club?
Yeah, in
That's
Brookline.
very exciting.
Yeah.
That's something you'll take with you for many years. That's great. Congratulations.
That would be where the 99 Ryder Cup was played.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
not an easy course by a long shot.
Yeah.
And if I might, Steve Traster, our athletic director, wanted me to recognize Wollaston Golf Course, and you also practice at Ponkapaw?
Ponkapog and Granite Links.
And Granite Links. And Mr. Traster told me that all of those golf courses let Milton High School's team go and practice. And again, the fees would be for the school prohibitive if, in fact, we had to pay. So he said that our neighbors have been really wonderful to our golf team. And do you want to share with the audience where you practiced last Saturday?
The Newport Country Club. Definitely a pretty good experience.
It's been a hard week.
So we want to congratulate you. Lots of enthusiasm in the school about your play and following your record, and we are very, very proud of you, each of you student athletes. And thank you for coming here tonight for the school committee.
Thank you.
You know, also, you know that your principal, Dr. Arangio, is a golfer. Yeah.
He was when he was in retirement.
So, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well done.
Do we have anyone else for citizen speak? That's all I have on my list, in case anyone came in late. No, then we will move on to approval of the school committee minutes of October 3rd.
So move.
Moved by Ms. Sheridan,
Second.
second by Mr. Walker. Any discussion on, or comments or corrections on the minutes of October 3rd? Ms. Kelly?
Under 6B, I believe it was drafted a letter to the Board of Selectmen about the importance of this position to Milton High School.
Yes. Any other corrections, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, abstaining, 1 abstention. 501. I have reviewed the minutes of our last meeting, so just, they didn't get finished in time for the packet for tonight. You'll have them for next time. And so now we move on to the superintendent's report. Ms.
Thank
Gormley.
you. Thank you, Chairman Pavlicek. I'd like to invite the Milton High School team to again join us. They presented our advanced placement program at the last meeting. Tonight, the team is bringing an SAT presentation. Our principal, Dr. Arangio, I would ask you to make the introductions. We're all familiar, but keep in mind the viewing audience. Somebody may have tuned in and not been with us at our last presentation. So you're all familiar faces to us. Then I think you'll have you back to this committee.
That's better that than the camera.
Oh, okay. So welcome back. Thank you for the work you're putting into these presentations and giving up a night with your families after a long day. Dr. Arangio, would you do the introductions?
Yes, we are essentially the same team that was here 2 weeks ago to talk about AP scores and achievement. We have two vice principals, Ms. Beach and Mr. Cron. We have two department heads, Michelle Cruiser, Math and Technology, Ms. Wright, who is in charge of Humanities, English and Social Studies, and Ken Obert, who is the Director of Guidance in Milton High School. We're here tonight to do a number of things. First of all is to give you a brief overview of the SAT. Secondly, to talk about Milton High School's recent scores and achievement with reference to the SAT. Talk a little bit about some of the things we're doing at school to help prepare students to take the SAT. And finally, talk about some things that we're planning to do the second semester and next year, which we hope will give SAT scores a boost. So with that said and done, I'll turn it over to Mr. Cron, who I think will walk us through a series of slides and fill in with some further details, and then you'll hear from the other folks up here in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raggio. And thank you to the school committee for this opportunity to speak about a very important element of the academic program at Milton High School. Just want to give a little background on what the SATs are for those, just a refresher. I know some of this was a history lesson for me, maybe so for some of the folks at home. The College Board was organized by a small group of colleges in 1900 with the goal of creating a common entrance exam. And the result was the Scholastic Aptitude Test, or SAT. Today, the SATs are highly regarded by colleges and universities as a leading independent measure of student college readiness. They're administered in grades 11 and 12. The SATs are designed to measure general knowledge and the analytical skills today's students need to compete in the 21st century. The SATs are a standardized assessment made up of 3 distinct sections: critical reading, mathematical reasoning, and writing. Aligned with the national core standards, the PSATs, which are co-sponsored by the College Board and the National Merit Scholarship Corporation, are most often administered to students in grades 10 and 11 and are designed to provide first-hand practice and evaluation data for the SAT. In addition, students taking the PSATs are entered into the National Merit Scholarship Program. Milton High School administers the PSATs to all students in grades 10 and 11. And because the PSATs are aligned with the Common Core standards, and because we test all students in both 10th and 11th grade, the PSATs have tremendous prescriptive value. The student test results of the PSATs come in the form of a PSAT skill and assessment sheet, which breaks down scores for individual students as well as the school and allows us to plan for remediation as well as to look for patterns of success and areas of improvement. Research tells us that the best predictor, one of the best predictors of first-year college grade point average, or GPA, is a combination of high school GPA and SAT scores. This is important. Oftentimes, there are discussions that how can one high school to another high school to another high school, how can you measure one A against another A against another A? When you take all of the data and you combine it, this statistic gives validity to both the SAT as well as the grades that are handed out throughout the nation throughout the nation's high schools. So on average, students with a grade point average of a B- or better scored 100 points or higher on each SAT subtest. In addition to the 3 subtests of the SAT, critical reading, mathematical reasoning, and writing, the College Board offers SAT subject tests, which measure students' knowledge and skills in 20 particular subject areas. Students can take 1, 2, or 3 tests on a single date, and each test takes 1 hour. In 2011, 42% of Milton High School seniors took SAT subject tests. Milton students who took SAT subject tests scored about 75 points higher on each SAT subtest. That's 75 points higher in critical reading, 75 points higher in mathematical reasoning, and 75 points higher in the writing skills test. So these subject tests are relevant. 46 Milton High School test takers took 3 or more subject tests. And of the 14 tests taken by Milton seniors, subject test scores were highest in mathematics level 2, French, French with listening, and physics. Participation rates are extremely important. You'll remember when we presented on APs, we talked a lot about participation rates. When using SAT scores to reflect on the quality of a school's academic program, considering the rate of student participation is critical, and I'll point out a little bit about why that is. In 2011, more than 1.6 million graduating high school students, high school seniors in the United States took the SATs. 1.3 million of those students were public school students. States with the highest average SAT scores also have the smallest participation rates, with some statewide participation rates as low as 3 and 5%. According to the College Board, the Massachusetts public school participation rate is the highest in the nation as of last year, 84%. Over the past decade, Milton's participation rate has increased from 90% to 99%. Milton High School's nearly 100% PSAT participation rate and our nearly 100% SAT participation rate, that's for grades 10, 11, and 12, significantly increases the reliability and utility of the data we collect in the form of student test scores. The following chart shows the average scores of Milton High School seniors on the 2002 to 2011 SAT reasoning test. Students on this exam, they can score between 200 and 800 points on each part of the test. There were some changes made in 2006. When I took the SATs, there were only 2 sections. So when I started looking at student SAT scores, I was like, wow, these kids are way smarter than we used to be. Well, they added a few things. Prior to 2006, the reasoning test was comprised of a verbal and math score. Since 2006, the reasoning test has included critical reading, math, and writing. When attempting to compare Milton to surrounding communities, 2 important interrelated data points make this comparison extremely difficult. First, our high participation rates are unique. Again, the highest state scores are coming from states with participation rates as low as 3 and 5%. There are a number of states where that participation rate hovers around 10%, but 99%, although it's becoming more and more common. In fact, we have 2 states now that are passing statewide laws where all kids will take PSATs, but we've been doing it for a while. So the first thing that makes it difficult about comparing us to surrounding communities is participation, and the second is the diversity of our test-taking population. That's social economic diversity as well as racial and ethnic diversity. Okay. The national average scores for the graduating class of 2011. So now I'm going to go on to make some comparisons. That's why I wanted to set you up with the comparison complications. The national average scores for the graduating class of 2011 was 497 in critical reading. In Milton, our scores were 508. Nationally, in mathematics, was 514, and in Milton was 527. Nationally, sorry, Barbara, in writing, it was 489, and in Milton, we were at 508, and this was last year. According to Massachusetts Department of Education statistics, when compared to schools with test-taking populations of similar size in Massachusetts, white Milton student SAT scores were, on average, 36 points higher in reading, 39 points higher in mathematics, and 23 points higher in writing. When compared to schools with test-taking populations of similar size in Massachusetts, African American Milton student SAT scores were, on average, 36 points higher in reading, 29 points higher in mathematics, and 34 points higher in reading. When compared to schools with test-taking populations of similar size in Massachusetts, low-income Milton student scores were, on average, 23 points higher in reading, 7 points higher in mathematics, and 3 points higher in writing. Our most recent discussions with the College Board tells us that based on our students' critical reading scores, combined with our high student participation rate, the overwhelming majority of students in the Milton Public Schools and at Milton High School are on track to succeed in college. I'm now going to turn you over to Mrs. Wright and to Michelle Cruiser to talk about the relationship between SATs and PSATs in our curriculum and the preparation programs we have in place and the role of the guidance department in the PSAT and SAT process. So again, I'll introduce Michelle Cruiser from the math department. She's our math, technology, and business department head. Barbara Wright, director of humanities, and Ken Albert, our director of guidance.
So I want to start talking a little bit about curriculum. And as Alan had said, the SAT exams are aligned with the National Common Core standards, the same standards that we have here in Massachusetts, and therefore the same standards that we have here at Milton High School. So our curriculum is aligned with the SATs, and our students do well here at Milton High School not because of anything that they did in the past 3 months or anything they did in that year, but really everything that they've done since elementary school and coming up through the years. All of the teachers, all of the schools have prepared our students to do well in the SATs. As far as some verbal skills that students are exposed to on a regular basis here at the high school, our humanities teachers, English and history teachers, do a lot of closed textual analysis. So they will have kids read critically different pieces of literature or articles or essays, and that helps our students prepare for those critical reading portions of the SAT. We do a lot of vocabulary within the content of reading, which is something that students are expected to do on the SAT tests. When we do that, we do a lot of studying of the root words, the prefix, the suffix, the roots of words, so that kids will be able to, if they see a word they've never seen before, they might be able to at least figure out a portion of that word, and that will help them. So they do that on a regular basis in our classes. We focus particularly in freshman, sophomore year on grammar, so that will help our students with the different sections of the SAT, the improving sentences, identifying sentence errors, and improving paragraphs, all 3 sections of the SAT. We also do timed essay writing so that our students get an idea of how long it takes, or how long 30 minutes is, how long 20 minutes is, as they do their writing. And so they are prepared in that way. And then we also have SAT practice questions, SAT practice tests, as we get closer and closer to SAT exams throughout the year. So that's what we do on the humanities side, and Michelle's going to talk about on the math side.
As Barbara mentioned, the SATs are aligned with the Common Core standards, so in mathematics, that's also true. Our recent 6 through 12 math curriculum changes directly address the needs that we have to improve student scores in the SAT math. We're trying to better prepare the students earlier on, increasing the rigor in the lower grades so that they're ready to go, preferably at the end of their junior year to take the SAT and reasoning test. Also, we regularly do PSAT analysis. We get a really nice analysis sheet. There are individual ones for the students, and then we have the whole grade for grade 10 and for grade 11, and we analyze that data and we revise the curriculum as needed to address those needs. And again, that will result in better SAT scores. The data from the 10th and 11th grade PSAT, it's really helpful and very, very useful. As a department, we actually have SAT block day problem sets that are pre-made. We worked on them last school year. So every block day, teachers can use the problem sets with their classes, especially the juniors. that are going to take the SATs or the seniors in the beginning of the year, they focus on a topic that you will see on the SAT, and there are easy, medium, and hard questions, and then you spend the time reviewing it afterwards. So that's something that we currently do in the math department. And we're actually currently writing SAT problems into our curriculum to be easily used as starters for the class or closing questions or just embedded in the lesson. There are so many SAT questions out there. We're actually organizing them and piecing them apart and figuring out which ones go with which content so that teachers can easily get to the questions they need to match up with what they're doing in their classroom. So that's some of the things that we're doing in the class right now, particularly for the juniors and seniors at the beginning of the school year, because the seniors are going to take the SAT in the fall and the juniors will take it in the spring. But we also can use those questions for sophomores too. And even freshmen, we can see the easier type of questions in the classroom. We also offer SAT prep classes outside of the school day. Our classes are lined up with the testing administration that we have at Milton High School. For example, we're running a fall session right now leading up to the November 5th testing administration, which is here at Milton High. Last spring, we developed a curriculum, a definitive curriculum, before it wasn't as solidified in both math and verbal skills, and we're continuing to revise and improve the course as we go on. As I mentioned, we added a session for fall this year. That was the first time. We've been offering it in the spring over the last few years. So we added a fall session for seniors specifically, but some juniors have signed up also. The course actually focuses not only on test strategies, but it also has content focus too. So we split it. There also is a pre-test in the course and a post-test so we can monitor the students' progress. In addition, when we ran the spring session, when we added the fall session from the spring session, we also decreased the cost to the students, which was, I thought, very good, and increased our enrollment, I think. So in the future, we want to increase the hours of the SAT course outside of the classroom. We want to keep the cost down to the student, and we want to find as many times as we can to accommodate our busy student schedules. We've been running Saturday sessions, after school sessions. We tried right after school, in the evening. We're talking about maybe doing mornings. And we also want to develop the curriculum further and make a during the school day course out of the SAT prep class that we have.
Good evening again, everyone. As Alan said, we have almost 100% participation in our SAT program. So you may be wondering, how do we do that? The SATs are administered on Saturday, as opposed to the PSATs, which we administer here during the school day. And all students in grades 10 and 11 take the PSATs. We don't have that luxury with the juniors and the seniors. They need to register themselves, as opposed to the PSATs, where students don't have to register. They have to show up for the test, and yet we've still had almost 100% or 100% participation in the last few years. So how do we do that? One of the ways we do it is through our developmental group guidance program, which some of you have heard me talk about before. We meet with all of our students in our caseloads from September through May, including the juniors and the seniors. Our meetings run during the advisory period, or the former activity period, and we have more meetings with juniors and seniors towards the appropriate times, seniors being in the fall, juniors being in the spring, and those are the times that we use to promote the SATs and to talk to them about how to go about registering for them, why should they take them. All students receive a copy of This Is Your SAT, which explains in detail how to go about registering for the test. We encourage them to register early. primarily because if they intend to take the test at Milton High School, we are a test center. We test 3 times a year, but we do fill up. And if a student registers late, even before the late registration deadline, they're running a risk of being placed in another test center that still has openings. Students receive additional reminders for registering through a variety of sources. You've heard us talk about Naviance. Students receive reminders on their Naviance accounts. Alert Now is used, either email or voicemail. Edline has the calendar with the registration deadline dates and the test dates listed. And the morning announcements or the daily bulletin also reminds students about registering. In addition to providing the registration information, the group guidance curriculum also focuses on things that students can do to improve their SAT scores. And again, we do that at the appropriate time for juniors and for seniors. We encourage them to look into SAT verbal and math review courses. The reason we do that is because they're competing against other students, not just in Milton, but throughout the country, most of whom are taking review or prep courses. So in order to be competitive, they need to realize that they need maybe the extra tutoring or the extra review in order to achieve the best scores possible. The website for the College Board, collegeboard.com, provides sample test questions and a variety of different test prep features. And the guidance counselors stress the importance of preparation prior to taking any admissions test, whether it be the SAT or the ACT, in order to be as competitive as possible.
If I can just add one more thing onto that, between the PSATs that we have all of our sophomores and juniors take, between the great work that the guidance department has done and the messages of the teachers and just our student body, it has become an environment in our school where it's not an are you taking the SAT question, it's when are you, how many times are you taking it? And it's an environment so the students know coming in, freshman year, this is part of the high school process.
So looking ahead, in the spring we'll be offering 2 sections of SAT prep for juniors during the school day. And we intend to expand the after-school and Saturday prep program from 10 hours to 12 hours, which will carry some cost for the district. For the fall, we plan to schedule more sections of SAT prep for seniors during the school day, and again expand our after-school and Saturday SAT prep program from 8 to 12 hours. SAT prep is extremely important when you're dealing with a short amount of time for SAT prep. The focus will tend to be strategy. As your hours increase, you become more and more content-based, and so your preparation becomes much more effective. So we want our students spending as much time preparing for the SATs as possible. But it's not only the amount of time, but it's when they prepare. So we really want to stress tonight the importance of timing in relation to SAT preparation. 20% of Milton High School seniors last took the SAT in their junior year. And seniors who last took the SAT in their junior year scored about 39 points higher on each subtest. The total is 116 points than students who last took the test in their senior year. So there is some fade out in the learning that takes place over the summer. And seniors who go to take, say, some of the English sections, and they haven't prepared, they find their scores will actually go down without preparation in the fall. But if we're to leave you with one thing that we want you to know that we're thinking about, the point is that every student should be taking a preparation course prior to the administration of the SAT. And finally, looking ahead, We will continue to institutionalize the use of the PSAT data to drive curriculum review and to increase the level of articulation of our curriculum in grades 6 through 12. And as we said 2 weeks ago with the presentation of the AP program, these SAT scores, the PSAT scores, the AP scores, the work that gets the students to this level of success doesn't begin in the high school. It begins in the elementary. It's a cumulative effort. So we want to continue to look at our curriculum and our instructional practice and continue to raise the bar from K all the way up through 12. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Mr. Walker.
First, congratulations on the performance that you've been able to accomplish. And I think even more impressive is the participation rate. I think 99% is just phenomenal. So congratulations on those 2 points. I think I was looking at some 09-10 data, and if you look at performance there by race and to a lesser extent by gender, there are some gaps. That is that white students tend to perform more successfully than do African Americans, and in some cases there's a male-female performance difference as well. Assuming that that trend has continued, what's the strategy for starting to address? First, why do you think that is, and then second, what's the strategy for closing some of those gaps?
I'd like to take that one if you don't mind. On average, you're right. There is a gap between the scores of our white and African American students, but when you compare the scores of minority and low-income students as well as our white students with scores from districts with similar test-taking populations, our students perform as well or better than those districts. In fact, of the 250 school districts in Massachusetts, Milton ranked 8th in the state for the number of African American students taking the SATs. Of the 250 school districts in Massachusetts, Milton ranked 8th for the number of African American students taking the SATs. And furthermore, the African American students scored on average almost 50 points higher on each subtest than the average African American student score in the other top 10 schools. So when you look at how our students are performing, when you compare the data, again, that's why the importance of participation rate when you look at the data is so important to consider. Our students are doing exceptionally well. That by no means that there isn't miles of work to do. But when you try to contextualize the data, what you find is that our African American students are doing much better than other districts with similar demographics. I don't know if I missed anything.
No, I think you question, Mr. Walker, is one that we recognize and we see. There is a difference, and we can't sugarcoat it. And it's not to say that it's condoned. When Mr. Cron was talking about trying to compare, the difficulty in lots of these comparisons, one has to do with the participation rate that he spoke, I think, at length about. The other is the piece of the diversity of the student population. And I think that's well known, not only in this state, but as well in the country. There is a difference. When you look at SAT scores, the data that's published when the SAT results are just generally generated in the September of any school year, at first blush, sometimes our scores look marginally different from the state averages. When you dig down and say, what do each of these subgroups look like? How are our white kids doing compared to schools of similar size populations? How are our African American students doing to schools of similar size? You do see in all of these schools, you see a difference. It isn't just in Milton. It happens in Brookline and Newton. It happens in Boston. It's virtually in every community across the country. You know, some of that answer goes back 50, 60 years when James Conant, I'm going back into the late 40s now, from the University of Chicago, pointed out the relationship between socioeconomic status and achievement. And, you know, as a result of his studies, people got the notion, oh my God, you really can't do much in education because if you come from a poor home or a minority home, you're going to do poorly. If you come from a white home or an affluent home, you're going to do well. What difference does education mean? Some people sort of said education really provides little value to what we're hoping to do. Other folks saw it as really as a challenge. If you look at sometimes predictors, you can be all over the place. I remember once, 10 years ago, I read this startling statistic to me anyway. It was, what do you think is the best predictor of educational achievement in this country? And it listed about 15 variables. The single best predictor of a youngster's educational achievement is the mother's educational attainment. That is to say, how far mom went in a school system is the best single predictor. Better predictor of educational achievement than socioeconomic status or something else. Now, in the most effective schools that we would have, you could not predict a youngster's socioeconomic status from his achievement because you'd blur those lines. So you're right, there is a difference. There's a lot of terrain to be made up. We think we've got some strategies to sort of make that narrow. Will it be eliminated in my lifetime? I don't know. God only knows. I sure hope so. Would I bet my eye teeth on it? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, thanks, because you got at the thrust of my question, and I don't mean to diminish the comparison between our African American students and others, but frankly, my standard is how are they performing compared to other Milton students, and I think that's where we really want to address and close a gap.
And I'd like to add just one thing with respect to the achievement gap. One of the things we plan to do with the class, as well as with the SAT prep classes, thinking about the spring, is that our guidance counselors already have a plan in terms of targeting the students, looking at GPA, looking at how they did on the PSAT. One of the plans is to specifically meet with those students to say, we highly encourage you to take this class, it'll be good for you. And so really looking at the students who need it the most is a part of the plan in terms of increasing their scores. And many of those students are students of color.
And if I might add one thing to Mr. Walker's question, we are saying prep classes, but then more than the prep classes, this is a cumulative test. And the high school team is working. I met with them the other day, and they're working on identifying every freshman and looking at the factors. Are they in the freshman seminar? Do they have a mentor? Are they in a club? Are they in a support? Are they in an athletic team? And so we're identifying every single student, correlating their grades to, is it freshman seminar that's setting these students up to succeed? Is it being in a club and activity and having those teachers every week bring your grades to your coach or to your teacher that correlates to success? The team sat down the other day. They've taken every freshman. They know the names of the students who don't have that other person looking out for them. We meet regularly to go over what are the criteria, what are the programs that are going to set students up to succeed. We've identified over the past years students going from 8th to 9th grade, and again, a small pool of students staying with them, looking out for them. So again, we can talk about the prep classes, which, as I keep saying to them off the record, we won't use the man's name, but there's a reason that there's a national program that everybody pays a fortune to go to. So they're looking at giving our students that advantage by setting up those in school, but we're looking at the entire experience and looking at MCAS, AP, SAT, because every Milton student, and we talk about students who are at risk, we should talk about, if we raise the bar for every Milton High School student, every single student will reach that bar. And it's ours, and again, what they're doing with the freshmen, and again, all the grades, what are the programs? What are the courses? Where are we going to put our valuable dollars and manpower to set every single student up to succeed the day they walk into Milton High? And so you're to be complimented about this initiative. Starting last year, Dr. Arangio has run with it, taking those freshmen and staying with them, and not waiting till they take the junior SAT saying, what can we do for you now, starting when they hit the door. And it's been brought up here, when we get new students into the school, you know, I've said that I think they should have to take a test, and then, you know, Mary, you need some work in math. You're going to come Saturdays until we know that you've got that set of skills that put you on the same footing as students who have gone through the Milton Public Schools. So when I hear the presentations, it's a balance between those prep classes, but what we do with every hour of every single day. And again, if you raise the bar, I believe for every single student, if you raise the bar as high as you can for the highest student, that's going to have an impact on the student, every single student in the Milton Public Schools.
And a couple weeks ago, we talked about the AP exams, and we hope that a good indicator of how our students of color are doing is when we looked at the percentage of our students of color taking AP courses and how much that has grown over the last 10 years. And hopefully that's an indicator of a change in the SAT scores as well.
You know, one final note. Over the course of time, 20 years ago, there wasn't much of a relationship between what was tested on the SAT and what was taught in the classroom. And we had this huge variance. Over the course of time, state departments of education, communities have incorporated more of what is tested on the SAT into classes, and I think you've heard that from the two department heads. Hence, student grades that they earn in class are getting to be better predictors of success with reference to the SAT. There was some notion a few years ago that there wasn't, because of this lack of relationship, what you scored in a classroom wasn't related too much to what you eventually get on the SAT. That is really narrow. So much so that in looking at the Milton High School data for the last couple of years, interestingly, that if you had a GPA of a B- or better at Milton, so if you're talking about Milton data, B- or better, you scored, on average, 100 points higher on each subtest than the kids who had a GPA of a C+ or less. So high-scoring kids in Milton now are blowing, knocking the socks off SAT scores. Lower-scoring kids on GPA are not. So the whole push here to really push, don't just zero in on the test, which is what we want to do, but focus in on all the classrooms. If your GPA goes up, more than likely your SAT scores will go up, and not marginally. I mean, 100 points per subtest is a 300-point, the C scores up there, total score is 1,600 points. 300 of that is explained by grades, or related to grades. So, you know, for parents who are out there, school committee, just keep pushing to get those grades up. It makes a difference.
Interesting.
Kristen.
Hi. First of all, thank you for coming out at night. I know you worked all day, and you did this a couple weeks ago, too. And as a parent of a senior, I really want to thank the guidance department. I can't believe the amount of communication that's been happening since junior year. The group guidance model has been phenomenal. And the parent workshops, I haven't made it to every single one, but I've made it to some, and they've been really, really good. So I know other people have had kids who have been seniors, and, you know, you all feel the same exact way. But since I'm a current parent of a current senior, I really appreciate it. The prep course is taught by all Milton High School teachers, both the English and the math. Are they always Milton High School teachers?
For math, we've had Milton High School teachers.
Okay, and for the English?
For English, we've had, this year we have 2 teachers who had taught at Milton High School.
Okay.
And this year was a very quick turnaround time, and
Okay.
there were people that didn't have the ability to make the commitment for those Saturdays or
Yep.
Mondays.
Because, not to mention any names, but some parent got an email, your son came late from the Milton High School teacher and not from the other teacher. So it's just interesting how Milton High School teachers are really supporting the SAT prep course. And I guess my last question or comment is, how many kids are taking the SAT prep course on average?
Last spring we had over 100.
Yes.
Out of the class of
240.
240?
And then
250?
this fall, because it was such a quick turnaround, we have about 70, 75 students.
Okay.
And the biggest dilemma with the SAT prep classes is fitting it into the busy schedule of our
Yes.
students. You know, we have Monday
Yes.
afternoons, and that helps some kids, and then we have Wednesday evenings, and, you know, you watch the kids come in from a sport and then sit in an SAT prep class, they're exhausted Saturday morning. So we're looking for better ways to fit it into a student schedule.
If we are, I mean, as you heard, our plan is to try to build it into the 7-period day for the second semester. We can do that, we'll make a dent in some of this, but we're willing, I'm willing to be totally flexible and try to catch as many customers as we can, hook by crook, and whether it is an afternoon or a Saturday, or even contemplating if we could squeeze an 8th period in the morning. Now, I know what 7 o'clock is to lots of folks. We have folks who are in the music program come in at that time. I'm willing to, instead of having a 45-minute period, think about a 35-minute or a 30-minute period, so many days a week, but find some way to work it in. And, you know, as I said, you know, all the years I've been talking about the effectiveness of SAT prep programs, and whether it is done in the private sector or public school setting. In my own children, if every one of these kids were my own child, I wouldn't let them take the SAT unless they had taken a SAT prep program immediately before the testing. It makes a humongous difference. And so the question is, how do we work these things in the 7-period day with the number of students who are involved in clubs and sports and whatever without just draining them completely? We got to find some way to make this thing happen, and the more we can work it into the school day program, the better. And that's the long-term goal. But right now, much like as we heard, we sort of threw this thing together at the last minute. We came in September, says, what are we doing? Can't we do something? So we went from 8 hours to 10 hours. Now the goal is to bump it up to 12 hours after school next year. But I still want to look at that school day kind of a thing, which we had a few years ago when I was here the first go-round, but disappeared the way of the wind. But we'll get it back.
Thank you.
Ms. Kelly, you had a...
I did. I was wondering if you've done any comparisons of students that have been in the Milton Public Schools for their entire career, comparing along racial lines, et cetera, to see what the performance is and the differences.
Compared to students who came in later?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Basically, if you were to take the whole group and just take out all the students that have come in along the way and say these students, these core students, started in kindergarten and were with us through whatever 11, 12 years, you know, till they took the test. What are the results?
Right.
I would certainly be interested in hearing about that kind of data analysis.
Can do that.
And the other thing that I'd like to ask is I think parents sometimes get concerned when we hear discussions of MCAS, SATs, all these standardized tests, and the immediate reaction to them is, oh, everyone's teaching to the test. And I guess I would ask you to disavow all the people listening that this is what's happening. I think perhaps it's the way we get at the knowledge that is being taught in the class rather than we're teaching to that knowledge. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
My first thought is that the test is teaching us. The tests are designed to tell us how we're doing it. I think one of the things we need to do that we can do a lot more with is PSAT data. We get that data in 10th grade. We have 2 years to work with it. We can then look at the strengths and weaknesses of our program, and for the individual student, we can get that information in the hands of individual teachers who are working with those students. We can also look at, again, what every single student has or doesn't have. We need to keep increasing our use of data. So I understand, as a creative person, I have a great respect for structure, and it's an irony, but it's a necessity. So I find that data is informative, and I use it as a tool, but teachers are going to use the test to tell them what their kids know and don't know and need to learn. But again, the test is designed attached to the core standards. So as Dr. Rangio said before, years ago, private schools, the SATs and the APs were their curriculum. And public schools were over here, and everyone said, well, what are you teaching? And so the College Board came along and said, well, we're going to come up with these tests so that we can know what kids really know. And that's, I remember my third history of education course, I couldn't believe the College Board was founded in 1900. And so now our curriculum and the SATs, those things are embedded in our curriculum. But we need to use that data. That's the tough step. Prepping the kids for the test is nice. Getting them ready for the test, providing a good set, but then then the work really starts. And that's where the follow-through, we can do a better job there. There's a lot more that we can wring out of those PSATs, because the 10th grade exam is one thing, but the 11th grade exam is another. We're seeing tremendous gains in 10th and 11th grade. But then how does that influence SAT prep? So my initial response is we use the tests to teach us. We're not going to teach you the tests.
If I might add, and I hope this doesn't stir up another controversy. About 20 years ago, early 90s, when the curriculum frameworks started to surface, we had great arguments, philosophical, practical, at schools about we are now required to teach this test. And it's not what I'm teaching in my room. So if I'm an English teacher in the English department with 10 others, frankly, in those days, we might have 10 teachers going in 10 different directions with different sequence and pacing and different materials. And if a youngster moved from this classroom to this classroom, they were lost. And they moved them from this one back to another one. I mean, we're all over the place. Frankly, it didn't make a lot of sense. And part of the difficulty with the low scores from the first round of MCAS testing was we had this misalignment. We had a written curriculum, we had a taught curriculum, and we had a tested curriculum. And they never lined up. Now, the last 20 years, we've done a better job of that. I mean, I would hope we would test what we teach. So for the folks who are saying, what we're teaching to this test, my answer would be, thank God, we made the connection. I mean, I'd be furious if I were in a classroom and the teacher was teaching X and testing me on Y. So we're trying to bring this in. Now, the bigger question is the test the kind of a thing that really either assesses what is taught or it has some relationship to something else that's supposed to happen next? That's the $64 question. The interesting thing about what the College Board has done, they've sort of cut this path about critical thinking and the kinds of experiences and the kinds of assessments you get. More and more, those kinds of things are working their way into state curriculums and the frameworks, and they're working their way into the classroom. I mean, what you're getting now for kids, the kinds of problem solving, it isn't the names, the facts, and the dates, the memory stuff that dominated education up until a decade ago. It's the kind of things that really make a difference. And these kids are better prepared now than they were 10 years ago. I mean, I hear all the time, oh, schools used to be better. When? They're more humane now, they're more effective now, they teach the kind of things that make a difference later on in life now. Before I got to high school, half the age-eligible kids weren't even in school. They're all in school now. And they're all getting something more valuable and rewarding. So I think we're moving in the right direction. I have teachers at Milton High School. I'm not going to get into a lot of details. I remember the first round of MCAS. They wanted to fight with the state and fight with the directive that this is what you had to do. They're now aboard, totally aboard, and doing wonderful things in their classrooms. So it takes time to get around. We're on the right track. We just need to, to sort of stay with it.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker, you had a question.
Just two quick things. I think Ms. Kelly's question is an important one, and I'll be interested in the answer to that. And I raised a similar question about MCAS performance, but I'm interested in what the differences are between those students we've had for their entire academic career versus those that came maybe in the middle or high school level. And then finally, I'm a strong advocate of SAT prep. I saw both of my sons' performance improve as a result of that. So if you need someone to do Saturday recruitment, I'm happy to do it.
You're on.
I have to say with the SAT prep courses, just with doing the pre-test and the post-test, and just monitoring their progress as we go through, you really see a big improvement in the students' scores. I mean, it's of course there are some that don't improve as well as others, but overall, there's a big improvement. So.
Quick question. Oh, you guys had something to say?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wanted to say about the SAT because I just took the SAT in the fall and I got a 2020, and I've only been in school for like 4 years, and I can say most teachers never say they're teaching us for the test, it never feels like it,
Right.
but it never really I would not say that the teacher actually prepares for the test also, so it's it's definitely not there. For example, I had 2 teachers back to back that did not do any vocab. And even though if it wasn't for the test or if it was for the test, I think it's kind of important to have that kind of studying the vocab. And when you do the SAT, when you actually prepare for the SAT, you actually get better at everything you're doing because you're actually learning more vocab, learning more writing, and sometimes learning more math. I learned logarithms just doing preparing for the SAT for the math, and I ended up getting 720. So when you're actually preparing for the SAT, you learn more. You can actually learn from learning the SAT. That's going to help you in class. So I think that will be pretty good. And about the SAT, I think you guys could probably, if I may, I think it would be a really good idea to have some kind of SAT prep class during activity period. Because a lot of kids, especially African Americans, tend to not do anything during activity period and kind of wander around. And I mean, if there's a time there, I think you should definitely have someone say we have a class here, and if you want to do it, you can do it during activity period, or you could probably force them to take it, because I think the kids that don't need it the most will be the ones to sign up the first. So if you really want to help the kids that don't do that well, you kind of have to force them to do it. And I think it also comes to their parents, because I don't know, that's kind of how I see it, because I wouldn't say it's more lower income, because my parents are not that. I would say I'm pretty much lower income, but my parents never really mentioned the SAT, not even once. Never asked me if I was gonna take it or not. But my freshman year, my English teacher told me that if I wanted to get to a good college, I should probably work harder on my SATs, and that kind of pushed me forward. So I think it's very important that sometimes the teacher should probably step up as almost like parents. I don't want them to be parents, but kind of step up and say you have to do this or something.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very well said.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Bagley-Jones, you
I don't know if I can follow that. That was pretty good. But my question was about kids on 504 and IEPs. What's happening with them in terms of support? What's happening with them in terms of SAT scores? Where are we at with that? And not answer it tonight, but it's just something that I think it's pretty important to look at. What kind of supports do we offer them? What do the scores look like? Do we know, or?
Accommodations for students on ed plans, 504 plans, have to be approved by the College Board.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We apply for accommodations for those students at the beginning of their sophomore year or at the end of their freshman year, so that when they're sophomores in the fall of their sophomore year, if they are approved for accommodations, they receive those accommodations when they take the PSAT. We cannot provide accommodations the way we can for MCAS on any College Board test unless the student has been approved and the accommodations are listed specifically by the College Board.
But can I just follow up to that?
And
But then what are the scores for the kids with the accommodations? Do they?
comparable.
They what?
Comparable to their
Comparable.
peers. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Would you explain to Ms. Bagley-Jones's question and Mr. Albert, for somebody viewing, what an accommodation is for MCAS or SAT, because the average viewer wouldn't understand?
And what is a 504 plan?
Excuse me. A typical accommodation for a student on an educational plan or a 504 plan would be extended time, preferential seating in a classroom setting, second set of books. Those types of accommodations are very typical and very easy for classroom teachers or proctors of standardized tests to administer. The major accommodation, when we're talking about College Board tests, either AP tests, SATs, or PSATs, is extended time. They do provide other types of accommodations, testing over multiple days, readers, one-on-one proctors, but those are unusual. Most students receive time and a half or double time, but time and a half is the most
But
typical.
don't you, Mr. Aubert, don't you have to already have a special education individual educational plan or an existing 504? And so one doesn't just come forward when they're about to take their SATs and get a special education individual educational plan, or go to the guidance department and get a 504. These are educational programs that begin in the elementary, middle, and prior to the SAT experience or the MCAS experience. And the guidance counselors should know what the individual plans read and meet with the family and many times the students and decide what those accommodations are going to be. But we pay a lot of attention in the MCAS world to those accommodations. When you think now, Joe talked about 10 years ago, grades 4, was it 6, John? And 10. And now every single grade, all of these disciplines, the number of students being tested is unbelievable on the MCAS. We used to be able to send the results to families in an hour, and now it takes 2 days to get the results back to the families. So again, if people are interested in these accommodations, they should speak with the guidance counselors in their children's individual schools. Right, Mr. Aubert?
It's highly unusual for a student to be diagnosed in high school with a learning disability. They've usually been screened out long before they ever reach the high school, so that when we receive them as ninth graders, they're already on an educational plan or a 504. The College Board is very suspicious of any student who suddenly qualifies at the beginning of their junior year with a quote-unquote learning disability, and they will ask for the test protocol in those cases. They want to see that the testing has been done and that there is in fact.
But if you have a 504 or a special education IEP, those accommodations are available to the students.
And it asks right on the application for accommodations, has this student been on their educational plan or their 504 for at least the past 6 months? So they're aware of that. Yeah.
And we'll do that data about the time students have been in the Milton Public Schools.
Ms. Sheridan.
So I have lots of little comments here and there, but first of all, thank you. That was a really wonderful and uplifting presentation yet again. Stephen, right? I want to thank you for your comments because they were right on and they speak so well to exactly what this presentation was showing, the importance of testing early and testing often and using that data to inform, and the importance of your family. But I think your comments also spoke to the question that was raised that Ms. Gormley just said she's going to look for the data, and that is whether or not, how the students that have been in our school system since kindergarten have scored in comparison to others. From my perspective, that information really isn't that important because they're all our children, and we're responsible for providing them the best that we can do in the time that we have with them. I think that obviously students who come from other districts or even, other maybe parochial school or, other states even, come with different sets of education, different sets of curriculum that they've gone through, which doesn't really put them at a disadvantage, but puts them at a different place in terms of their learning. And the disruptions that those transitions may have caused might impact them as well. But having said that, they're all our students, and I know that you work so, you're so devoted and dedicated to making all students succeed, and to me, that's what's really important. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Well, thank you very much.
May I ask the group to stay for just a moment, just to tag on?
You didn't want to go home.
A part of my happenings tonight and my information for the school committee is I'm just sitting here thinking that first week in November, between Footloose, us being a testing site, and NIAS coming, would Dr. Aranjo and Michelle Cruiser, everyone at Milton High, I just want to frame this, has worked very, very hard over the last 2 years in their self-study preparing for their NIAS visit, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, to go through the accreditation of Milton High School. A very, very important process, a process we fully support. As a superintendent, I want to tell you, and I'm waiting till after they leave, every staff member who's given above and beyond, contributed, and are part of this process. And the other day, to the entire leadership group, the elementary administrators and principals, I said, I referred to myself from the horse's mouth, but I said, I'd like Dr. Aranjo has for years been involved with NIASC, and I wanted him to give his perspective on NIASC and the accreditation process. You've heard from me and Michelle Cruiser here, who was co-chaired with Brian Board, the work of unbelievable steering teams and coordinating with NIASC and really preparing us to be so ready for this experience that I think it would be wonderful for the school committee to hear from the horse's mouths and for the viewing public just to hear, Dr. Aranjo, if you would take a minute for the public and the school committee, your perspective, what this experience is going to matter to Milton High, and then Michelle, a few minutes about the preparation and the anticipation and what we should expect. Dr. Aranjo? I didn't prep anybody or tell them that this was happening.
And I'll make a note that it isn't the school committee who are calling you horses.
He didn't tell you the second part of my response there, but I'll leave that for away from the meeting. Once every decade, public high schools, independent schools, colleges and universities, by and large, are accredited by an organization, not-for-profit organization called the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, NEASC. They also have, over the last 10, 15 years, now accredited middle schools and they're going down to elementary schools. And what happens in accreditation is that you have what we call quality standards. They are best practices across the school. We deal with curriculum and instruction and leadership and financial support and the like. There are over 7 standards. And in each of these 7 areas, there are these quality indicators, things that schools, best schools, should have in place or should work for. And I will tell you, there are very, very few schools that have achieved all of those indicators, that have in place programs and practices that fall under each umbrella. But you go through, you have the standards, you have about a year and a half, 2 years of the school called a self-study for the school to look at those, and you have deliberations by the professionals at the school. So you have parents join the discussion, students join the discussion, school committee members may join the discussion. And the committee, it's called the self-study committee in these areas, talk about what the school has in place that is close to reaching these best practices. And at the end of this year and a half period, they have something that those assessments go into something called a self-study report. The self-study report goes to NEASC, and they find a team, in Milton's case, it would be 16 professionals, practitioners, superintendents, principals, classroom teachers, who will come to the school with the self-study report, and they will follow students around. They will meet with the self-study committees. They will question small groups of people at the school and find out, how does this work, how does that work, we read this, we didn't read that, what does this mean, all those kinds of questions. Then they are spending Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they leave, and the chairperson, when they leave, takes their discussions that occur over that 4-day period and puts them in what is called a final report. The final report gets sent to the hosting school somewhere a couple months later, And after a turnaround time of about a week, the principal gets a chance to look at it and provide some feedback and correct some factual errors. You get a final report, which essentially is the report of the visiting committee. That document could be 100, 150 pages long. Directs the school for the next decade. It talks about things they need to continue, things they need to begin doing that they're not doing. And in addition to that report, they make a judgment as to whether the school is going to continue with accreditation, be put on warning, or still put on probation. The probation one is a ticklish one when certain elements of those standards are not met. They may draw the line and say, you're on probation until you fix this. That doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. Might be a couple dozen schools, less than 20 in the New England states that might be on probation at a given time. There may be double that number on warning. So it is a long process, can be expensive, but it's a drop in the hat compared to what you would have to pay a consultant if a consultant came in here and did the same kind of analysis. It would not be done by professionals and practitioners. They're people like you see around the table here. They work in schools. Some of those folks who come are have an urban school experience, some have a suburban, some have a rural, some in small schools, some in large schools, some in diverse schools, some not so diverse. But they all come, and they are wonderful learning experiences. They're learning experiences for Milton High School, but they're also learning experiences for the people who come. So that's what the process is all about. There's a strict protocol you must follow when the visiting team comes here. They're really good people. We've had a meeting and had a couple conversations with the chairperson of the visiting committee. He is a assistant superintendent from a small city in southern Connecticut, smaller than Milton. My sense is he's smart. I think he has a nice perspective. He's a wonderful way about him. So I think we're going to end up with a report. I have confidence in his ability. And I think we're going to get a real good snapshot of Milton High School in November of 2011. And I'm sure they'll suggest things that will make Milton a better place. So it's going to be, I think it'll be good. It'll be good.
And Dr.
I will tell
Arangio?
you off the cuff, we're going to be accredited. We are going to be accredited. I mean, I've been around the block enough to know when a school's in trouble and when it's really not. And we bless you. And we may, I mean, someone may want to put my head in a vice for saying this, but this is an accredited school.
And Dr. Arangio, what you were explaining, and Michelle to the group, is that in the self-study, the group ranked themselves on these different standards. But when the group comes in, the visiting team, they recognize strengths in each standard and areas that have to be worked on. There's no ranking. And I was very impressed when the co-chairs came and they addressed the faculty. He settled down the faculty by saying, one, this is a group of your peers. This is not General Electric coming in and evaluating what they don't know. So this is practitioners. And he said, look at us. We're going to give you did he use the word 1,000? 1,000 free hours of guidance and suggestions. And they had a wonderful way about them. I want to recognize, again, Michelle and Brian, on behalf of the staff, the steering committees. We have set up, before Michelle takes over, I've got this in print, there's going to be a panel the first day. And this will be an interaction between Milton High School and the visiting team. So the school committee's invited at 1:45, I have it all written down for you, on that Sunday to be an observer. And then you'll have your own private session from 3 to 3:45 with the visiting team. And then there'll be a reception from 5 to 5:30. Dr. Arangio said they're strict. I mean, they have us getting people there 10 minutes early, so they start right on time. We've taken names of parents from all of the staff members, and on Sunday, there'll be an opportunity for a representative group of Milton High School parents and guardians to meet with the visiting team. And then again, Monday, another 45-minute slot, another whole group of parents and guardians who have been invited. I would tell you a cute story. They've let me do a few things, get involved. So I said, well, they can reply to me if they're coming, and we'll keep the master list at Central. And one parent wrote, how can I prepare? I don't want to ruin the whole process. And so parents are responding, guardians are responding that they're enthusiastic to have been asked, and your school committee will have their own private session. I've asked Joe Emerson today. That is a private session, whether that's posted and how to proceed, but NEASC has been there before all of us, and they'll be there after all of us, so we'll find out what their procedure is. But Michelle, would you share?
We're very excited for them to come. I mean, it's after a lot of time. We spent a lot of time on this self-study, so we're really excited for them to come. We have some butterflies. I think the students have some butterflies. I think they all know about it and when they're coming and what's going to happen, and just in general. And the teachers have a little bit of butterflies, but they're good butterflies because you have to be a little bit nervous, you know. So they'll come on Sunday, and then they're going to have the panel presentation, and they're going to interview teachers. 2 teachers for each visiting committee member. So it'll be 32 teachers in all that they're going to interview.
On Sunday.
They're going to interview parents. They're going to interview the school committee. Then we're going to have a little welcoming reception that's going to run half an hour. Everything is very timed out. And then they'll go back in the evening and look at our student work that we've collected. We've collected 70 to 90 pieces of student work from all the different disciplines, all the different levels, college prep courses, honors courses, AP courses, related to our school-wide rubrics, to unit rubrics, etc. So they'll look at student work starting on Sunday night. They'll discuss what they see, the depth and the rigor. On Monday, they will be shadowing students. In the morning, they'll have a facilities tour with the custodian and head of facilities, excuse me, Bill Ritchie. And then they're going to shadow students from approximately second period to 6th period. We have a representative population. Mr. Gasper, the chair, asked for a representative population, so following all our demographics for the 16 students that were chosen. So they're going to get followed around. They're going to eat lunch with them. So the students are really excited. After that, they're going to meet with another group of students that same day. They're going to interview the subcommittees, the standards committees for the self-study on that day. Then they're going to go back and work until about 10:30 in the evening at their hotel. Come back on Tuesday, meet with all different groups of people, special services. They'll meet with the cafeteria folk. They'll meet with custodians again. They meet with the leadership team. They meet with administrators from around the district. They meet with everybody. They will go into classrooms and visit classrooms at 10 to 15 minutes at a time. They will have a board with all our pictures up and make sure that they hit everybody in the school. They will also meet with parents again and more students on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, they're mostly going, the afternoon on Tuesday into the evening, and then most of the day Wednesday, they will be putting together their reports. They present to each other, so they kind of stay a little bit secluded, coming out once in a while to visit teachers and administrators. And at 2:30 on Wednesday, they will make closing remarks to us, and they really cannot say what's in the report, just general closing comments, and then they will go off back to their schools, and the visit will be over. But I think we're really excited. We have a great school, and this is all about growing and the things that we can work on and the commendations. It'll be interesting to see what they see from the outside perspective, and then the recommendations for the way we can grow and make this place an even better place than it is right now. So we're very excited about them coming.
And Michelle's an expert. We've encouraged over the last 2 years teachers and administrators to go out on site visits so that this isn't going to be a surprise. And so she speaks from firsthand knowledge that many of our teachers and administrators at Milton High, I haven't told the school committee yet, but when we're through with this process, and it's so positive that I would like to go through that process with our middle school or perhaps our elementary schools, because to Michelle's point, it's a reflection and it can make an outstanding place even better. And it was also impressive to me how the co-chairs said that for them and all of you who went on visits, you come back and you learn from your peers and you bring the best of what you've seen and found back to your own school. So a lot of anticipation at Milton High School but I don't know who planned that first November weekend, an SAT site, Footloose. I don't know, who's in Footloose on Friday night that's taking their SATs on Saturday morning, that's also involved on,
I think there may be students.
I know. So a lot of good things. So I want to appreciate that summary of the NEASC, and I think from the people on the line, you get a good flavor of what's going to happen.
Thank you.
And students, is there anticipation about the NEASC visit?
They might be shadowed.
Let me just say that a good visit, and I'm sure we're all anticipating one, comes from good preparation. It is a lot of work over the last 2 years to get ready for this. The self-study is a mammoth undertaking, and we said 7 standards, yeah, but there are up to 22 substandards in some of these standards, and you have a page limit, and it's hard to get it in. They say it's a 120-page document. Well, it's to hit all the things you have to hit. It's very hard to do. It's quite an undertaking to put them together. I'm working on my second self-study document, and they're no fun, but they are really it's a very interesting process to get together with all your peers and talk about all the things that are going on and so forth. But writing it is an undertaking, and I give you credit for doing it because
And there were 2 parents on each standard committee, and yes.
Except for, I believe, curriculum, I believe.
And so I'll tell you, Gary Kelly contacted me, and he said, anything I can do, I can't believe how hard they've worked for 2 years getting ready for this. So we should recognize those 12 parents publicly who gave that time, and they're a good representative group. But to all of you, thank you, and whatever you need. Thank you.